In ancient times, when Israel and the Philistines were constantly at war, a giant warrior named Goliath became the terror of Israel's army. His size and strength were formidable, and he stood on the battlefield each day challenging the Israelites to face him. Clad in impressive armor, he wielded a spear as large as a ship's mast. Day after day, Goliath hurled insults and mocked Israel's soldiers, demanding that someone fight him. But no one dared accept the challenge. The Israelite soldiers feared Goliath, who laughed and boasted of his strength, knowing that no one seemed capable of defeating him. Even King Saul, the leader of Israel's army, felt intimidated by the giant's presence. This fear began to demoralize the Israelites, who already doubted their chances of victory. As Goliath continued to taunt them, the mood in the Israelite camp became increasingly gloomy. The situation seemed hopeless, and many soldiers wondered if they would ever see a way out. In those days, David, a young shepherd boy living in Bethlehem, came to the Israelite camp to bring provisions to his older brothers, who were soldiers. David was the youngest in his family and spent his days tending his father's flock. When he heard Goliath's insults and defiance, he couldn't help but feel indignant. Unlike the soldiers, David was not intimidated by the giant's size or strength. His faith in God was unwavering, and that gave him courage. Intrigued, David began to ask the soldiers why no one dared to face Goliath. The soldiers, surprised by the young man's curiosity, explained the situation to him. They also mentioned that King Saul had promised great rewards to anyone who managed to defeat the giant. David listened attentively and was surprised that, despite the king's promises, no one accepted the challenge. For David, Goliath's size was not enough of an obstacle if God was on his side. David then decided to go before King Saul and offer to fight Goliath. The soldiers mocked his bravery, considering that a young man with no military experience could not defeat the most feared warrior of the Philistines. But David, with humility and firmness, explained to Saul how in the past he had faced lions and bears to protect his flock. His confidence did not come from his own strength, but from his faith in God. With these words, he convinced the king to let him try. Saul agreed to David's proposal, although he insisted that David wear armor for protection. However, David, upon testing it, realized that it was too heavy and unwieldy. In the end, he decided to face Goliath in his shepherd's clothing and his trusty sling, a tool he had mastered to perfection. David took 5 smooth stones from the river and put them in his bag, ready for battle. Although it seemed like a risky decision, he was convinced that God would protect him. Seeing David without armor and with a sling instead of a sword, Goliath burst into laughter. He ridiculed David, considering him easy and unimportant prey. He scornfully asked him if he thought he could defeat him with a simple stone. The Philistine soldiers also mocked the young man, confident that victory was assured for their champion. However, David did not let the taunts affect him and maintained his confidence. David bravely answered the giant, saying that he came in the name of the God of Israel, whom Goliath had defied with his insults. He declared that God would give him victory and that everyone would know that there was one true God in Israel. These words shocked everyone present, who could not believe the young shepherd's audacity. But David knew that strength was not in his hands, but in the faith he had. His firmness left Goliath lifeless. David placed a stone in his sling, spun it rapidly, and in an instant, launched it at Goliath. The stone flew through the air with deadly accuracy, striking the giant directly in the forehead. Goliath staggered, shocked, as the stone sank into his skull. Within seconds, the huge warrior fell to the ground. Silence filled the battlefield. The Philistines were stunned to see their champion fall so quickly, and fear began to grip them. The Israelites, on the other hand, burst into cheers of celebration, for they had witnessed a miracle. David, wasting no time, walked up to Goliath's body, took his sword, and cut off his head as a sign of his victory. Seeing Goliath's head in David's hands, the Philistines began to retreat, filled with fear. Without their champion, their confidence disappeared and they soon began to flee the battlefield. The Israelite soldiers, motivated by David's bravery, pursued them, achieving a great victory over their enemies. The news of David's feat spread quickly among the people of Israel. David carried Goliath's head to the king and thanked him for giving him the opportunity. Thus, the legend of David and Goliath lives on today as a symbol that courage and faith can overcome any obstacle, no matter how small. David's victory taught the world that, even if we are small or weak, we can face the giants of life. In this act of courage, David demonstrated that true strength lies in the heart and in faith. That day, a young shepherd changed history and showed that the impossible only needs someone who has faith in God and in themselves.